Hello, welcome to the Small Business Briefing brought to you by the Small Business Association of Michigan. I'm Brian Kelly, President and CEO.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Welcome. Today is Monday, August 8th. And this week, we want to welcome our newest premium member, Field Plumbing and Heating. They're a family business founded in 1961 from Lawrenceville. So welcome to Field Plumbing and Team. And of course, we're welcoming them on behalf of our sponsor, Marana Group, who is a data document and distribution company in Kalamazoo. So Brian, let's start with the new jobs report that was recently released. And it showed that, it was a little stronger than maybe people expected. What's the good news and bad news there?
Yeah, so it was kind of a surprise where job growth was expected in the previous month, but it came in quite a bit higher than the economic forecasts were showing. So 528,000 jobs created over the last month. Now the original estimates were more like 258,000. So pretty much doubled up. The estimates, the unemployment rate was 3.5, and it was estimated to be 3.6. So these are nationwide numbers that we're talking about here. The state numbers will be released a little bit later on, and we'll cover those as well in the future. So stronger than expected jobs numbers. Now there's kind of good and bad. Obviously, new jobs, good kind of overall for people that are seeking jobs, of course. But there's also some concern, created some concern that inflation is not going to be under control as fast as what maybe some were expecting or hoping. And so when the jobs report came out, we actually saw the stock market kind of take a dive because there was some hopes that maybe the Federal Reserve interest rate increasing would taper off now. That jobs report means it's very, very likely that next month we will see another interest rate increase, and maybe 75 basis points or 0.75%. So all of that, is kind of a mixed bag, if you will, depending on what your main concern is. And of course, there's still a lot of concern about inflation. I think that the idea of, there was expected job growth, but the fact that it came in higher, the demand for people was higher, means that there'll be kind of upward pressure still on a lot of different factors that eventually will lead to more inflation. Now, inside those numbers, they were the biggest were leisure and hospitality led the way with 96,000, and a net increase 96,000 jobs. Though the industry itself is still 1.2 million workers shy of its pre-pandemic level. So that industry, it actually is making some serious gains now. Professional and business services was next with 89,000, and then healthcare added 70,000, and government payrolls actually grew by 57,000, rounding out the top categories of job growth underneath that 528,000 number that came in. So it's kind of mixed messages or mixed signals in terms of that shows that there's still some real power in the economic recovery, but also maybe a signal, a red flag that we're not really curtailing interest or not inflation rates quite yet.
All right, and this might be a good time to mention that is kind of the Data Monday report for today. You want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, when I was looking at a lot of the new data that came out since last week, that one was of particular interest, of course. But a lot of the new data releases were there's so much happening, like with the stock market. That's not really our our focus on here. We're mainly focused on things that impact small businesses directly. So I'm not going to have charts and graphs today, but just some core important data out on the job growth and the kind of the good sign that means the economy, the economic recovery is still has some juice in it, but inflation still a major concern. And if rising costs are your biggest problem, then not a particularly good sign.
All right, let's talk about Biden's spending plan. A deal was struck supposedly over the weekend. What is this likely to look like?
So the spending plan was kind of a surprise, and I like to be transparent about things that actually do surprise me. I did not expect that they would be able to come to an agreement to move something through. Now, keep in mind that that the majority party, it's the slimmest majorities in the majority in the Senate. It's actually 50-50 tie with the vice president in the United States Senate. It makes it a slight majority for the Democrats, but they'd had a hard time coming to an agreement with Senator Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Sinema from Arizona. And when the Democrats and the Biden administration made this deal with Manchin, it made it look like they could actually get something through the Senate. The reason they can get it through the Senate is because it's a spending bill, and they get one shot at those each year, where they can do so without having to be concerned about a filibuster. So spending bills, moving it through what they call the reconciliation process, they're going to play that chip now, and they've moved it through the Senate. There was a lot of drama over the weekend with what they call vote-a-rama. It's just kind of an inside term that they use, and when you go through this reconciliation process, anybody can put up an amendment, and there's up and down votes. And one of the people that created the most drama was Bernie Sanders, who had a lot of additional spending votes, which were kept off the bill. So what should small businesses pay attention to in it? There are a lot of things in it that, outside of just kind of overall government spending, wouldn't necessarily directly impact small businesses. It's really the hiring of new IRS enforcement officers, the provision for that. It's raising new revenue, and part of that is through the way that they tax larger corporations and entities and individuals that would be way higher income and revenue levels than our members would have. The part that I think would more likely hit our members is the amount of new revenue that they're budgeting getting from current taxpayers, just through better or stronger enforcement, or I guess from our perspective, I'd say worse enforcement from the IRS. So about 87,000 new IRS agents is what they're looking to add into the process. So you might say, well, aren't they just going to go after billionaires? I don't know. There's like 1,000 billionaires in America, 87,000 people. Math, it's not just for them. So that's the part that I think is giving the most heartburn over this process from a small business perspective, just the sheer number of new IRS agents. We've often said that we would support and advocate for new and expanded customer service at the IRS. That's just the ability to answer questions and process returns and help people through some of the gray areas and be much more responsive than they are, would be positive. So it's not an anti-IRS thing, but to really zero in on IRS enforcement as a way to pay for the new spending is something that I'm afraid that will kind of disproportionately hit those middle to high income Americans, which, if you're a small business owner and you're a pass-through entity, even if you're not high income, sometimes your tax return can look like it because all your business revenue goes through your personal tax return. So definitely a concern there. It's not on the president's desk yet. It's just made it through half of the process, and we'll see whether or not the House is ready to play ball. When I say that, I mean whether the Democrats can unify. They have a majority, both chambers, on the left side of the political aisle, and we'll see if they're able to put together keep that side of the aisle together to pass it, because it's not likely that they'll get any Republican support on it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Michigan Reconnect. This is an initiative that SBAM supported, played a large role in kind of promoting, and it hit a big milestone with 100,000 applicants accepted into the program.
Really exciting news. So we've been concerned about labor force participation rate, but also just the matching of skills for those who are in the workforce today, and are they ready and capable and able to take to meet the demands of a 21st century global economy. So a lot of the workforce programs in the past have really been aimed at larger cohorts of workers. So good programs, but for somebody who just needs to hire 1 or 2 or 3 people, there weren't enough programs for that. And so Reconnect kind of sidestepped that whole process and was just a last dollar in tuition assistance program for workers returning to school. So it's 25 years or older to go and get an associate's degree or a trade certificate. And the only condition really is that you got to fill out the FAFSA to get any public support that is already available, and then to put the work into it, put the time and work and energy into it, and whatever the gap is left, that the state through this Reconnect program would pay for the education. You put these things out there and you never know, is there going to be demand? Are people really going to take advantage of it? And there have been 100,000 applicants now that have been accepted into the program. It's too new to know how many will stay through and get it done, complete, a certificate, a trade certificate, or an associate's degree at the end of the process. But great sign that there really is demand. So as we see these concerns in workforce, one component of fixing that for the future is to ensure that we have the most, that we get the most out of the workforce that we have. We need our state to grow more. We need more people, but step number 1 here is to make sure that the people that we already have are able to take advantage of all the opportunities that are available today.
It really is great, and we'll make sure to drop a link for more information in the comments here. So last Tuesday was election day. How was voter turnout overall?
Well, voter turnout was really quite high. It was a little bit less, a little bit lower than it was in 2018, the last time we had all these state offices up on the ballot in the primary of 2018. But you have to remember that the governor's race at that time was open on both sides. So you had a competitive election on the Democratic side, a competitive election on the Republican side. And so the turnout was a little higher, but still, this year was 2.1 million people that voted. 2018 was about 2.2 million. So that's pretty high, and I think not terribly surprising given that there are new maps. There's so many candidates running really competitive congressional elections. Just a lot of campaign activity, and it truly did drive up activity. We even saw in some cases where there were real hot local offices, like county commission races, and some serious campaigns. A lot of times you don't see at the local level, and in some of those counties, it really did seem to drive up the participation as well. So tons of participation, and I think it's something that we'll probably continue to see generally an upward trend as more and more people are engaging in the political process all the time.
That's really great. So now we have the top of the ticket set, right? Tudor Dixon is the GOP candidate. What's your initial impression on how this race is going to go?
Yeah, and you might recall last week I said that the previous week I said I'd bet my house that Tudor Dixon would win the Republican nomination, and then a week ago today I said I'd bet my life that she would. It was all the things were going her way, that she was going to win the nomination. She did, and she won that nomination by a pretty wide margin. She won in 80 out of 83 counties, and so she comes out pretty strong in terms of it wasn't a weak win out of the Republican primary. It was a strong win out of the Republican primary. Now, that said, Governor Whitmer has raised an enormous amount of money and has a real war chest, and there's already spending. I think the biggest risk on the Republican side is that they won't be ready to kind of go out there and define themselves, because, well, just spent a bunch of money on a really competitive primary. And so whereas the governor can just go straight at both defining her opponent and setting up for the election. But generally speaking, there's headwinds against Democrats in this election. So Whitmer has an advantage, certainly with name ID and resources, funds that have been raised. Dixon, just generally the climate might be more favorable to a challenger than it normally is. A lot of eyes right now on who the running mate will be that Dixon chooses to run with her, and some speculation out there. I think that decision will be made very quickly because the convention, the political party convention at the end of the month, has to ratify that decision. And so I think we'll see that pretty soon. But, probably post Labor Day, we'll have a pretty good picture of whether or not this is going to be a highly competitive race. And the real danger points at this point, really, for the Republican side, is that they just don't have enough money to go toe to toe coming out of a competitive primary, whereas the governor has a lot, has really record resources and record fundraising over the last couple of years. So if I were a betting person, I would say that this is going to be a closer election than it was in 2018 when Governor Whitmer won by about 10. All these elections change quite a bit, but I think it probably will be a relatively close election. But given the financial advantage that Governor Whitmer has, Republicans are at a point where they really do have to be able to put some resources together fast before they find themselves getting defined by their opponents.
So SBAM endorsed candidates for the State House and State Senate last week. Any big surprises there? And then overall, how did our slate of endorsed candidates do?
There really weren't big surprises. There were some competitive elections that you could have seen going either way, but most of the elections were within the margin of what you would have expected to see. So starting at the congressional level, I think probably the most, one of the most, I'll call it like shocking developments, even though it was kind of predicted, but still the fact that it happened is still just difficult to understand the magnitude of it, is that the city of Detroit will not have a Black member of Congress in their congressional delegation for the first time in 70 years. The way they did redistricting, and we talked about this before, that it did result in a case where the city of Detroit was kind of parsed out and kind of put with other areas further outstate in order to make those districts more competitive. But what it meant was it put candidates from the city of Detroit at a disadvantage, and that concern definitely came true. Now SBAM does not endorse in congressional elections, so we don't have a record to describe there. But that was an outcome that I think was just difficult to wrap my mind around, that outcome, but was predictable given the way the districts were drawn. Now, looking at the legislative races, where we endorsed in 84 different races, we had a win percentage of about 86%. So did really well. Now you might ask, are you disappointed or happy with 86%? Would you rather be 100%? Look, if we were 100%, that would mean that we played it too safe, that we didn't get involved in races and make a difference, because we only got involved in races where the outcome was more sure. So I always expect that we're not going to pick right some of these races, but very, very proud of the work that the team did to vet. We get involved on both sides of the aisle. In this case, it was the primaries. And so the most active Republican primaries we got involved in, where, especially if you want to have some say in what happens in November, if some seats are more Republican and some are more Democratic. So if you want to have a say, if you want to really influence something and be a part of the process, you got to get involved in those primary elections. And that's what we did this time. So now we still need to support those candidates, the ones who made it through into the next step. And so our political action committee board will meet again. Our board is made up of small business owners. Our political action committee board will meet again, review the results, and then determine which additional races to get involved in for the fall. So the work is not yet done, but a great start. We're also going to look at a few other races, a couple of appellate court races. Courts are very, very important. A lot of these issues that we talk about, the final decision is in the court and not in the legislature. And then we'll also take a look at the Supreme Court as well, which are 2 positions up on the Supreme Court this time.
All right, let's talk a little bit about a lawsuit. The Associated Building and Contractors actually filed a lawsuit against the state challenging an executive order that reinstitutes prevailing wage laws.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting case to watch go through the process. So back in 2018, they call ABC, the acronym Associated Builders and Contractors, went through and collected signatures for a citizens initiative, which passed by the legislature to repeal prevailing wage laws in Michigan. And this is basically one that where if you want to bid on a government contract, then you have to pay the average union wages and in the surveys that the government does in order to get those contracts. And so it's in the past, it's been a big contention between union shops and non-union shops and non-union businesses. Many are small businesses or non-union businesses saying, hey, I'm getting locked out of government contracts when you do it this way. So anyway, those laws got repealed and it was done by citizens initiative. And so a literal change in statute. And what the governor did was to issue an executive order to reverse that change in statute. So the challenge here is that ABC is putting up is to say, hey, the governor can't just unilaterally change the law. The law changed in 2018. The statute changed in 2018, like literally changed the law. It wasn't just an amendment through in practice by executive order. Therefore, you can't change it back by executive order. And they filed a lawsuit. This will take a little while to resolve through the process. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm happy to share my my prediction or opinion is that that this is a questionable use of the executive order. That you can executive orders change the way that that government implements laws, but they can't change the law itself. And so I think probably at the end of the day that the governor gets overruled on this particular executive order, but we'll see. I mean, that's why we have a court process and we got to play it out. It's not just in Brian Kelly's projections.
All right. I want to let everyone know that we actually have 2 webinars coming up this week on Wednesday and Thursday. We have the advantages of converting from a simple IRA to a pooled employer-sponsored retirement plan. A lot of our members are seeing great success in our new retirement plan. So if you're interested, you can learn more during that webinar. And then we're also partnering with our cybersecurity gurus over at Sensei for Cybersecurity 101. And both of these can be, you can learn more at www.sbam.org/events. So again, check out all of our events coming up and those 2 webinars in particular. We hope you have a great week and we'll see you back here on Monday.
Thanks, everybody. See you on Monday.